There we go. Okay, now welcome everybody to the first session of Biblical Greek with Pastor Brett. We're going to learn Greek together just for fun, like I was saying. Biblical Greek session 1. If you can read my sign here, it is Intro to Biblical Greek, transliterated in the Greek letters. And so tonight we're going to work on diving right into the language and getting us there. So like I said, everybody needs something to write with and something to write on just for yourself, a notebook or scratch paper. In the chat right now is the link to our Google folder for our course. And let me know if that's the wrong link, but it should be correct. And we'll get started. I love languages. I used to teach Latin, and I have taught some Greek along the way too, both to kids and my Latin students, and then I taught Greek for the seminary as well. And so we got into this because one of you, Crystal, who's here tonight, is starting seminary in the fall, and she has to learn Greek for seminary, and she has an intensive course coming up that starts in mid-August. And so I said, we had this conversation, and I said, I could help you. And she said, okay. I mean, she can correct me. She could tell this story. But, and then I said, well, do you think other people would want to join in? And we said, well, let's see. So that's what this is. And so it's ideally to give us kind of a intro into the language, to explore it a bit and see where we go. So I'm not an expert in it, but I can probably point you in the right direction. Even my Greek is a little bit rusty, but I certainly can do this, and we can read some Greek together and get started. So I'm glad to see you all and welcome. So this is going to be an intro. For some, it'll be a little bit of a refresher. There are a couple people registered who have had Greek before, and so maybe it's about coming back to a language that you've learned before. And so as I kind of go over some intro stuff and some kind of parameters for our time together, I want to invite you to put in the chat right now. So take a couple moments to think and then put in the chat. What do you already know about biblical or ancient Greek? It could be something obvious. What do you already know about biblical or ancient Greek? It could be anything. No dumb responses here, but as I keep talking about our sessions together, drop your thoughts in the chat, or it could be even a word that you know, but what do you know about ancient or biblical Greek? Because that's our goal, to learn that together and reflect on it as the basis of the sacred text, because the New Testament is written in Greek, and see how the language impacts our interpretation and our understanding. So by the end of session 6, we will be reading some of the Gospel of John in Greek together. And really before that, we're going to get to do that, because we're going to just dive right in. We will also be looking at what ancient manuscripts look like, because we have this sacred text that is handed down to us and didn't just come out of a computer in printed form. And so it comes from these papyri and other scrolls and manuscripts. And so we'll look at some of those together and look at what they were like. And we will also take some time to look at Greek inscriptions and Greek icons, like those painted, you can picture them with a gold background of saints and others. A lot of times they have names written on them. So I thought it'd be a helpful thing if you could look at one of those and actually be able to read who it is in there. What we're not going to do, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to try and cram all of a language into 6 sessions. And we're not going to dive that deeply into the grammar or even vocabulary to memorize. This is going to be what is called the reading method approach in language learning. So we're going to dive right in, notice what we notice, take away from the language what we can, use a lot of helps, and then go forward from there. So Yeah, I'm going to read some of your things in the chat. Yes, it's different. Some of you know some Greek words, really cool. Scroll up and read if you haven't already these comments. Yeah, some of you might have watched the alphabet video that I sent around and noticed that the pronunciation might have been a little bit different than you have experienced before. So keep those things in mind as we go together. And we will be learning, as the last comment from Joseph there says, we will be learning Koine Greek, and specifically Biblical Greek is a part of Koine Greek. It's kind of a snapshot of Koine Greek. Koine Greek is the term used for ancient Greek from all those ancient Greeks, playwrights and authors that are so famous. They're all ancient in the Hellenistic era, use Koine Greek. And then Biblical Greek is a later and a kind of a snapshot of it because it's just from one periods of time with several authors in the New Testament. And it's like others said in the chat, it's not modern Greek. So I'm sorry, you're not really going to get to be able to go to the Greek Isles and learn how to converse, or I don't know, maybe you could get, this will help you a little bit with like reading street signs there, but not too much because even the fonts and those kind of things have changed a lot. And so it's different. It's for ancient Greek and Biblical Greek specifically. A part of this will be kind of a Bible study component, in that we will be reflecting on what this means. So that means, and most of you know me and my approach is not a literalist reading, but we read a text and pay attention to context and with an openness to interpretation. And so now we're going to get to approach the scriptures of the New Testament in their original language to say like, okay, but like, now I see like, oh, it looks different than in English. What does that mean? Now, some of you are church members, some of you are not church members, some of you are not Christian, some of you are interested in just the language component, and that's great. Some of you are more interested in the faith component, and that's great. Some of you are somewhere in between or both, and that's fine. I just want you to be aware that different people are here for different reasons, have different perspectives and interests here, and that's totally okay. I'm really glad that we're a really diverse group here to learn, and there are going to be different people popping in and out as their schedule allows. And so I really welcome that. So take what's helpful to you and leave the rest. Ask questions and don't be afraid of that. Raise questions about what it means and how we read, and we'll go from there. To that end, there's homework. It's optional. I don't care if you do the homework. The homework will be for fun. Like this week's homework is like practicing writing some words with the Greek letters and back and forth. And you could even do that for fun in your life in a different way. But I'm not checking the homework. I don't need to see your homework. That's one of the parts I'm glad to not be a language teacher anymore, is I don't have to check homework. But if you enjoy it, or if you want to hold on to these things, you'll have access to all the files and you can always do them on your own. Of course, if you really would like, or if you are planning to go on to further Greek studies like Crystal or others, and you would like help or for me to check your work, I'd be happy to. Feel free at any time to put questions in private chat to me. I'll go back over them too to make sure I didn't miss any after the session. But also realize that learning a language is a humbling thing. And I was just in Spain, and I don't speak much Spanish at all. And I was reminded again how humbling it is to work on learning a new language and how much courage it takes. And so I encourage you to ask the questions and make mistakes and try pronouncing things, and we'll mess up together, and that's okay. Everything will be in that Google folder, like I said. I'll put the link again one more time in the chat now. So That's where you'll find all of the session materials. You don't need to look at anything now or during tonight's session, but I'll be sharing my screen a little bit later. All right, I did a lot of talking. Any questions about what I said so far? Just kind of trying to say what we're doing and what we're not doing. Okay. Now, here are some questions for tonight. These are our reflection questions. And the way I'm structuring this time together is that every session we'll have some reflection questions. Some of them will be the same every week, and some of them will change. You can find them later in the folder in the same file with your homework. So just listen to them now, put them in the back of your mind, and then we'll come back to them again at the end of the session tonight. Here are tonight's reflection questions. First, how do you regard learning foreign languages in general? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Is it scary? And more generally, how do you regard foreign languages? Do they feel foreign? Do they speak difficulty to you, or are they tied to culture? What do you attribute just because it's a different language? Second question. Language and religion. What is the interplay and interact that they have with one another, especially when the religion and the language come from different cultures, like Greek and the New Testament, unlike Hebrew and the Hebrew Bible, which are so aligned and come from the same culture. With the New Testament, we have Greek, which is the language of the Greeks and the Hellenistic peoples, and we have a story in the New Testament about, at least in the Gospels, about Judeans who are Hebrews and who, I'm going to ruin the next question, which is, did Jesus speak Greek? No, he didn't. And who did is what I want you to think about. And then how do we regard sacred texts? So those are big, big questions, and just like rhetorical ones to put in the back of your mind as we start thinking about learning a new language together. All right, let's dive in. We're gonna look at some Greek. So I'm just throwing you in overboard, and we're gonna see what you can see and notice about the Greek. So I'm gonna invite you to put it in the chat, or you could unmute. We'll see how this goes. When you see this biblical Greek, kind of a first look. So let me get my screens correct and then go from here. Okay. So we're going to look at this in more depth later. This is the first piece of papyrus 66, which was probably written around the year 200, but may have been written as early as 120 and as late as the 400s. This is the beginning of the Gospel of John. Can't you tell? And it is a papyrus manuscript, so handwritten. So drop in the chat or unmute. Yeah, no punctuation. What do you notice? No punctuation. There actually kind of is a little punctuation. Yeah, very hard to tell where one word starts and another ends.
All capital letters.
Yeah, all capital letters are kind of like a mix. Yeah, no accent marks. Nope. Also, if it's all, like, there's no distinguishing between uppercase and lowercase, if it's all caps or some hybrid. What else do you notice? Anything else? Maybe you can recognize some letters. Yeah, this papyrus is in really great shape. It's a pretty rare one. And this papyrus is also rare because it's almost all, or it's basically all of the Gospel of John is held on this. Yeah, see some letters. You can probably make out the T letter, which is a tau. Yeah, it's crammed in to save space. I'm kind of surprised that they left this much room between the lines, actually. But it makes sense, and a lot of ancient manuscripts are crammed because this is expensive, right? But this is the beginning of the Gospel of John. Now let's look at more like how you will actually read it. This is the same text, or at least the beginning of it, in a printed form. So what do you notice about this? Yeah, we have accent marks and breath marks and punctuation. There are also verse marks or verse numbers, which you notice are not here. Verse numbers are entirely an addition of later. Yeah, the numbers just seem really weird. Also the punctuation, all of it. This is from, I took this from greekbible.net or something, which is my favorite, very simple way to look at the Greek Bible online. Yeah, the capitalization is weird here because it's not actually the start of every sentence is not capitalized. I'm not sure why. And this is not uniform across versions of the Bible. Anything else? And it probably looks like just a swim of letters, right? And that's okay at this point. But maybe if you looked, you would, someone else jumping in? Maybe if you looked, you would feel like, oh, I do see letters that I recognize. And you even can read the first word here. This is E epsilon, or it's eta, nu, and it's the word for in. Yep, it's in. So in is the first word there. So if we see that the first words are in, RK, that's how you pronounce this second word here, RK. Don't worry about being able to do that yet. Here it is, in, RK. There it is there. So, any other observations here as we look at this? Okay, I'm gonna stop the share then on that. And we'll come back to that papyrus later, and also obviously the text. But some of you, I can tell, have already jumped in and started learning the alphabet. Others of you haven't, and that's totally okay. And some of you, I'm so glad, just signed up for this today. So wherever you are with it, that's totally okay. But that's our next step, is we're gonna work on the alphabet and let the alphabet introduce us to some of the sounds and then eventually some of the words of the Greek Bible and the language here. So I shared with you a video, and I'm going to go to that now. And if you watched it before, great, maybe you've memorized it and you can sing along. I used to teach a different version of the alphabet song, one that I made up, so I can sing that for you another time. But this one is, of course, familiar, the tune. So I'm going to mute myself, but share this and we'll watch it together, and maybe it'll be brand new or a refresher for you. As we listen to the video and the alphabet, here's what I want you to listen for. that the pronunciation of the letters is mostly the same as the sound the letter makes. So, like for instance, there are two letters that are both E sounds. How we tell them apart, how I always go back to being able to tell them apart, is listening for how I pronounce the letter itself. So maybe that'll make sense. So listen to how they pronounce the letters, and that'll help you pronounce the sound that the letters make. So let me share that.
Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, Mi, Xi, Omicron, Pi, Rho, Sigma, Tau, Upsilon, Phi, Chi, Psi, Omega. Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, Mi, Xi, Omicron, Pi, Rho, Sigma, Tau, Upsilon, Phi, Chi, Psi, Omega.
Okay, I'm actually going to skip it ahead to right there, so you can see hopefully the lowercase letters there. And I'm going to pause there to ask if people have questions about the letters or what you notice about them. Now I'm going to go over the letters each in detail, how to write them and how to tell them apart and some pronunciation things. So if they're really specific to a letter, maybe we'll hold that. So, and come to it when I get to that letter. But for now, what do you notice about this as an alphabet? Like what letters are missing from here, comparing here and our English alphabet? What else do you notice about the letters just in a first look? Any thoughts? You can feel free to put in the chat or unmute.
Interesting how so many alphabets, like the order is so similar. I speak Russian and those are like the same first four letters as well. And it's very close to English, with some letters being like at the beginning and some at the end.
Yeah, totally.
So I speak a little bit of Russian too, Tony. And what it reminded me of was it looked like the lowercase letters and the uppercase letters didn't look the same, or at least not as close to similar as they are in English. And that kind of reminded me in Russian how when the printed letters look very different than when you write them out in cursive.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of variation between like this font, other fonts, and handwriting, and different kinds of handwriting, manuscripts, and different things like that. Sophie, to your question, I'll name this again when we get to Sigma, but yeah, you notice there are two lowercase s's. The first one that looks like an O with a tail going horizontal is for when the S is in the beginning or the middle of a word, and the one that looks like a lengthened S is for the end of a word. So two different ones there. Any other noticings? What letters are we missing compared to English? They're not really missing, but what letters does English have that this doesn't? Yeah, no C. no W. What other letters? J. There's no Y, but there's kind of a Y sound. And some of these letters are going to be like super easy and just like English, and some of them are going to be tricky. Yeah, no Q. I wonder how common Q is across like other language groups. And I find this kind of stuff really interesting. So, yeah. Any other things that you just notice off the back as we look at the alphabet here? Yeah, there's no V in Greek. There's 2 O's, 2 E's, and no V. To go back there again, V is kind of B. Some people would say that B can kind of flap into V, like in Spanish, we kind of see that melding of sound, but others would say, no, there's just no V sound in ancient Greek. It just depends who you ask. And the ancient Greeks aren't around to tell us. Good question, Crystal and Brittany. Multiple sounds, that's where it gets a little mushy. And we're talking about a language too that changed over thousands of years and over different culture groups. And interestingly, as you have Hebrew people who are Hebrew or Aramaic is their first language and they're writing Greek, they'll have different spelling errors than native, Hellenistic Greek people and things like that. So sometimes that helps modern scholars understand how ancient people understood language, is their spelling errors. But Greek, this is not a one-to-one. Yeah, exactly. And that's why also when people are reading the Bible or ancient names aloud and feel worried about how do you pronounce this? Well, just be confident. Pick something, stick to it, be confident. There are probably, yes, there are some absolute right or wrongs, but just pick something and go with it. Because, yeah, I think we may all be wrong on some of these, or we may not, accent them appropriately or put the stress on the right thing anyway. So we're all going to be a little off. So let's dive in and look at the alphabet. Oh, another letter that is missing. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and mess you guys up from the start here. And this is where you do not need to take notes and all this is going to be captured. But if you want to write things down, fine. Totally up to you, but some things I'm going to show you. One of the letters that was not on there is H. There is a letter that looks like H, but it's actually Eta, and it makes an A sound. It's a vowel. Oops. And we'll go over all this. Don't get scared. Stay with me. But I'm going to mess up your life that there is an H sound, but it's made by an accent. And someone wrote that it's a breathing mark, which is actually different than an accent. It happens only at the beginning of words. So you only have that. You have the H sound also included in others. Oh yeah, there are. Good joke about COVID there in the chat. I know who that came from. But back to this. So there's no, if you look at my screen, there's no H letter. You get the H sound through the rough breathing mark. And the rough breathing mark looks like this, the one in red, over that what looks like a W. This is in lowercase omega. So the omega, this is a lowercase one, makes a sound O, like O, omega. So remember, how you pronounce the letter helps you pronounce the sound it makes. So this is an O, but this is a soft breathing, which isn't kind of just a regular sound. But with the rough breathing, you got to put a little on it. You got to put a little rough sound of the air on it. So this makes a ho sound. So this is ho, ho. Repeat after me. You don't have to, repeat with me. Ho, oh, okay? So you can aspirate that or make that a rough breathing sound there. Also, and every time we gather, I'll try to have some of these kind of like, these are my like, the more you know sessions, where like I'm trying to like put in some little things so that you're like, oh, I've always seen that, but maybe I didn't know that. Or maybe you did, and somebody has taught you this nerdy thing along the way. We'll come back to this about the breathing marks. It'll show up a lot. All right, the word for Christ is Christos, chi, rho, iota, sigma, tau, omicron, sigma. There we see the internal sigma and the final sigma. So we see Christos, Christos. Now, the first two letters of Christos are chi and rho, which are written like this in uppercase, which is X and P, right? Which combine to make this, right? Which is your Christian symbol, this X and P thing, which, by the way, this is also why Xmas is a good thing, and we don't need to, Xmas is a totally like Christian thing because X is Christos, Christmas. But here's the other thing, and this is my real the more you know thing. You know this thing? Here, let me share my screen. So here's the chi rho, and it has two more Greek letters in it, the alpha and omega. But I also want to show you this hand gesture that we see in ancient art. And you also see pastors make this hand gesture when they're giving blessings or things like this. It's not Jesus giving bunny ears. There are some really good memes about that. But what it is this is the hand gesture to make the Greek letters chi and rho. So with the index finger and the middle finger, they slightly kind of overlap to make kind of an X. And then the one or more of the other fingers connect with the thumb to make a P, which is, well, it looks like us to a P. So rho, so chi rho. When it has a pinky out, it's actually thought to be 4 Greek letters, iota, sigma, chi, and sigma for Jesu Christu. But that's where the hand gesture comes from. It's the chi rho. So yeah, you may have seen this all your life and not known. It's 2 Greek letters and not just, I mostly do open hand these days. But yeah, you've probably seen it a lot. So we're going to dive in and work on our Greek alphabet. So I want you to have some scratch paper and practice making the letters with us. Even if you're experienced at it or super used to it, it can be good practice to do this and to think about how the letters are formed and made. And if it's your first time to it, this is a great intro and a way to learn the letters together. I'm going to share a lot of information probably pretty quick, but you can always come back to this. And we're going to keep learning this together and scaffolding on this. So it's not like I'm going to call on you and ask you to write or read all these letters, but we're going to practice how to write the letters lowercase. I'm going to practice on my whiteboard here and show you how my hand moves to make the letters. In theory, the lowercase Greek letters were to be made without picking up your pen. And that often could create, especially on earlier manuscripts, kind of a cursive. But like the one that we just saw in Papyrus 66, often later they're like really one letter at a time. My format here is I'm going to show you how to write the lowercase letter a couple times, talk about what it means, and then on the paper, very high tech here. But I want to show you how to write them. So on the paper, I've got the uppercase letter, its name, how to pronounce it, and a word or two in Greek that starts with that letter. And so you don't need to memorize these, but it's just a help. And some of these are really interesting words that maybe we'll dive into later with word studies or different things like that. So as we learn each letter, you can interrupt me if you have questions, put it in the chat or unmute, but we're gonna get started. So we're gonna start with alpha. And by the way, I hope you caught that alphabet does come from Greek. So we start with our kind of pen down at the line on the paper. And you make one. Now, does this need to look like a fish? No. This could look a lot like an A. That's okay. It can look like anything. And you'll see this vary a whole lot in different fonts and different manuscripts, how much the tail, how long this is, or whether it's just kind of like, looks more like an A. That's an alpha. There's the uppercase. It's just an A. It's kind of a short A sound, and so it makes the sound ah. Again, think about the pronunciation of the letter, alpha, ah, father, or papa. Depends how you say papa, though. I think that might involve other vowel sounds. This one can kind of get into other A sounds, but generally makes that short A sound. If you have been working on your Greek letters and you want to start trying to pronounce these with me, you can, as I teach you some words. The first one, and I picked all these words, by the way, because they are from among the most, the most occurrences in the New Testament. So these are the most common ones. And some ones that I just picked because they're my favorites, or I thought were interesting or important for like study. All right, the first one is Allah. Allah. Whenever you have a vowel start a word, it needs a breathing mark to tell you whether you're going to make that huh sound or not. Since this one is open, you don't make the huh sound. This is a soft breathing mark, so it's just Allah. But, that's a word for but, one of them.
Brett, is that another breathing mark on the last ah, or is that an accent?
Good question, Tony. This is an accent. I'm not going to teach accenting in depth, but I am going to put them correctly so that you see them. And often accents generally you can essentially think of it as a stress. There are 3 main types of accents in Greek, plus the breathing mark, but you don't need to know those. And even Crystal, you might need to, I really doubt they're gonna take off on the accents. It's good to learn, whenever you're learning any new language though, it's good to learn it how it should be, so that you see that visually and get that in. I've definitely made that mistake with learning other languages and thought, I don't need to learn the gender, or I don't need to learn the accents. And I'm like, yeah, I should have started from the beginning. So,
I got a quick question.
Sure.
If you leave off the aspiration mark, does that change the meaning of the word?
It can. So A, this is A is a different, this and this are different words. A and hey are different words.
Okay.
So they can mean different things. But when we looked at the papyrus, it doesn't have any accents or breathing marks. And so those are an addition of scholars who understand the language clearly enough to know where those go to help us. Any other questions on, I'll go over this one. It might make you have more questions. This is the word from.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
You when you made the alpha, you the upstroke and then it came through. In Chinese and kanji, they have all these character, and you have to make the stroke in certain orders, or it's considered wrong. Is it like if I make the stroke, the alpha, like go down first and up, would that be violate some kind of rule?
No.
Okay.
No. And even if you just like Google different Greek fonts or look at do a Google image search on Greek manuscripts, you'll see wildly different handwriting. But good point. Yes. Yeah. My engineers and math and science people are gonna I'll be curious what this speaks for you. Yeah, exactly. Just wait till we get to delta and all those. All right, this is alpha. The second word that I have up on the page there is angelos. This is alpha with the soft breathing and the accent. Gamma, epsilon, lambda, omicron, sigma, and that final sigma there. But what you noticed, throwing a wrench into our plans, but this is an important word. This is a word from which, of course, we get the English derivative angel. And this is sometimes translated angel, though I kind of hate that and think we should just always translate this messenger, because half the time it gets translated messenger, half the time it gets translated angel. Let's be consistent. So this, when gamma is doubled, the first one becomes nasal, and it makes an ng sound. So we get angelos. That's what happens. If you said agalos, people would know what you meant, but.
Is there a rule for the doubling of consonants in Greek that's actually like consistent across it, or do each of the, like in Italian, doubling, especially if you sing, there's a break, we call it, in between, but like is there no rule here in that way?
The double gammas is a rule that it nasalizes, and I think in the PDF of the Greek alphabet description that I put in the folder, it describes the rule for gamma. So, but no on doubling letters like in Italian. Those kind of things. So alla, angelos. See, we have alla. We have two letters there, and it doesn't become a thing. When we put two letters together, when we put two vowels together, we do have diphthongs, which two vowels make one sound. And we are going to see a bunch of those in Greek. So hold on. It'll all be fine. We're just doing this for fun, and it's going to be great. So alpha, we did one letter. We got a lot to go. Let's go. Beta, this one's nice and easy. Yes, okay, sometimes people can say that this could be pronounced with a B. Let's just not. This is a B. Beta. Here's the thing. We start a little below our line, and you make like B. And the capital is a B. And that's a beta. And the sound it makes is a buh sound. Just like in English, it can have that same kind of variation of pronunciation, like buh better. And the Greek word I chose is the word for kingdom. And this is, you can recognize a herb here. This is basil. It's not basil, so don't, but the letters are basil. So beta, alpha, sigma, iota, lambda, epsilon, iota, alpha, basileia. By the way, all of these words, how to pronounce them and their meanings, are in a file in our session 1 folder for tonight. So you can return to those if you're curious. So beta, basileia. Questions on beta? All right. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Gamma. This is a capital gamma, which you've probably seen written. Some people learn the Greek alphabet for like pledging a fraternity or sorority or at other times of life or for math or science. And you may have learned different pronunciations of the letters, particularly the last ones, but you may recognize gamma, the capital gamma from like fraternities. But this is one where the capital and the lowercase look quite different. So I'm showing you how to form the lowercase. And that is we start about halfway or a little above the line, kind of make a tail, go down. And sometimes this has a lot of air in it and sometimes it has less, like that. And so do your thing, it's a gamma. Gamma is a hard G sound. It's not really a soft G sound in Greek. So this makes the sound of gone or gamble, g sound. And so this is gamma, upsilon, nu, eta, gune. Gune is the word for woman. Who knows an English derivative? Gynecologist comes from this word, gune. And there's no Y in Greek, but the Y often comes from the upsilon, the U sound. So gune is woman. I picked this word because oftentimes we know just from life the Greek word for man, but we're not as familiar with the one for woman. The Greek word for man is anthropos, from which we get anthropology. Woman, gune, gamma. Questions on gamma? All right. Delta, uppercase, good math symbol. Lowercase, delta, it's just a D sound, duh. Now, this can kind of look more like an S that gets connected, or it can be more upright. But oftentimes in fonts and manuscripts, it gets a little more swirly, like this. I'm also not going to say that I have the best Greek penmanship. Again, you can look at the Greek alphabet PDF, in which I sent previously by email and is in the folder for you to reference at any time. So delta, duh, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. And the Greek words here are didasko, which is the verb for to teach. Questions about delta?
Wait, is it didasco? Is there an E in between or?
No, didasko.
Didasko, okay.
Didasko.
I thought so.
Okay. And then the next word is delta omicron xi alpha, doxa, which is a word for glory. Does anyone know a derivative from this word?
Doxology.
Doxology. Does anyone know another one? Orthodox comes from the verb version of this and the Greek word for right, which is ortho. So orthodox, comes from that. So this is delta, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. All right, let's keep trucking along. Epsilon is an E sound, our first E. So it's capital E. And then like a lowercase. So the lowercase looks like this, but it's written half size, so it doesn't take up the whole line. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. This makes a short E sound. Epsilon, etch, bet, epic. And the example words I have here are, and once again, if you're looking with me, you can try just pronouncing these with me. Try sounding these out as you're seeing these letters for the first time. Guess about this. So this is starting with a vowel, so it has to have the breathing mark. This is one is open, so it tells us no h sound. So this is Amy, Amy.
So with diphthongs, the breathing mark goes on the second letter.
That's right. Good catch, Tony. So right, this is an EI, makes the A sound, and that's a diphthong that makes one sound, and we put the accent on the second. Amy is the verb to be. This is I am. I could go in depth on verbs right now, but we won't do that. Amy, to be. This is I am. Ace is to or into. Ace. That one just makes sense to me, kind of like E. We saw earlier this word E, new. N is in. So it's in, this is into. Questions on this letter? Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. Zeta, because Z comes next, right? Of course. So let me erase so I can make it. You see the capital looks like a capital Z. The lowercase, now we're having some fun here. So the capital is a Z. Now we're going to take up the whole line if you're on line paper. Wasn't that fun? So you start at the top, make a swirl, and then go to the bottom and make a tail, like an S. If you think about it, it kind of looks like a Z. Like it's kind of a stretched out, different Z. So make your zeta. Zeta makes a Z sound, like in doze. You can also make a Z sound, like in wisdom. Zoe, Zoe. So this is not a diphthong. This is two vowels, though they look both like consonants in English. This is two vowels making two different sounds. Zo, that's an omega. A, Zoe. So this is zeta. And that's the word for life, like zoology comes from this. Questions on this letter?
Was it also true in ancient Greek that the letter was a symbol for life? Good reference from an excellent movie from the late 60s, which is called Zed by Costa Gavras, where the Greek opposition puts the letter zeta everywhere because it means he is alive, talking about a leader who's been murdered. But I was just curious if that was only in modern Greek. Excellent movie if you all haven't seen it. I was curious if it was only in modern Greek or if it had that connotation in ancient Greek as well.
I bet it's connected.
Yes.
Any other questions, Theta?
Is there a rule or to know whether it's which pronunciation, if it's the Z or the S-ish sound, or okay.
Nah. That sounds good to you.
I love this so much.
Let's see how this goes. We'll see if you notice a pattern. No, I don't think there's a rule for that. On that note, let's keep going with Ada. Ada will confuse you because it looks like an H. It's an E. And it sounds like A. So always go with how the letter sounds. So this is Ada, it makes an A sound. So long E. So this is an N with a tail that goes below the line. That's all it is. N with a tail that goes a little below the line. So Ada, like obey, or ace. That's really long. Anyway, there's some like actual linguist people in the room at the moment. You can correct me if I'm saying, like this is a long or short, whatever, because it's been a while on mine and I didn't look up the actual, but I'm sure about how to pronounce these. So Ada is the A sound. Here's the thing. This is a word just by itself, this letter. And this is the definite article. This is the word the, but this is the feminine. This letter, Ada, is associated with feminine endings in Greek. And so we use this one just by itself, the he, as the feminine version of the word the. So it's a definite article for the. The masculine is ho. So we have ho, hey, to, ho, hey, to. Those are the words for the in Greek. In the nominative, don't worry about it yet. So ho, hey, to. You're going to see these a lot. So we would see like, trying to think of like, I was going to write like
Zoe, like the life.
Huh?
With like hey Zoe, would that be?
Like hey Zoe, the life. Yeah, right, Tony. I was gonna write like hey Maria for like the, but the Mary is not a thing. Mary does not need a definite article. So yeah, hey is the word for the, and this is Ada. Other questions on Ada? Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta. It helps that they rhyme if you're trying to learn the alphabet. Some of them rhyme in order. So zeta, eta, theta. And so I was taught in Greek also that if you write these out, zeta looks like it's eating eta and theta. It's like chomp. So zeta, eta, theta, theta. The capital one is written to take up the whole line. Really, the lowercase one does too, but the capital one has a break. Capitals are not written with one stroke. So often they have like broken lines, whereas the lowercase theta, they would like make a long donut and then go back through the middle. Theta. So theta makes a TH sound like thing, and yeah, and then, or author, it's kind of a soft TH sound, author, and so theos is the word for God. Derivatives, what English words do we get from this?
Theology. Theocracy,
all those things, right? Theta, questions on theta?
So the accent mark is on the vowel that's not accented because it's theos, not theos, the way you wrote it?
Yeah,
I know you're not teaching.
It's not necessarily stress. It's not necessarily stress, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Good question. I was also just trying to emphasize the os sound, so I may have over pronounced that.
Wait, so theos is also the correct pronunciation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the spoiler, the accent's going to move and the endings are going to change. And so, like, as long as you can recognize kind of the core of these words, you'll be good.
So you know how in English we have like God, uppercase, like, and gods.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a distinction in Greek as well?
No, that's a really good question, right? So yeah, we make that, and that's really like interesting linguistic thing that we do, right, with the pronunciation of like God as a singular monotheistic, like proper name God versus gods, plural or common, which is not capitalized. Greek doesn't have that distinction. And I would argue really that any capitalizations in the biblical text are commentators' later additions, and really capitalizations are not used in Greek in that way, because generally, as you saw in the manuscript, like it's all written in one like form, all lowercase, all uppercase. Inscriptions are all uppercase generally, like icons are written all uppercase, and so it doesn't have that implied meaning by using the capitalization and not. And that also means that this word for God means every kind of God. It's not a proper name. Any other questions on this letter? All right, theta iota. Iota. This is a vowel, the I sound. It's short I, pit, sound, but it can also be a long I. So it can make either sound, like the I's in intrigue. And to write the lowercase iota, you just make a little I with a little bit of a tail if you want to, but no dot, which is why I don't dot my I's. Because I've taught Greek in so many different like seasons, I just don't dot my I's. Can iota be an Y sound when in the diphthong? Do you mean like Jesus?
Or like even when you're saying iota, like if you say it fast enough, it kind of sounds like a Y.
Kind of, yeah. It definitely bleeds over into that. Yes, so it can kind of make that Y sound. So that is the word that I picked for obvious reasons. This is Jesus. And so we have a soft breathing Jesus, which is how you write Jesus. But also, this is really Joshua. Because, and like we have sometimes in the Greek text, the New Testament, where it's written out Yeshua, which is the more proper Aramaic spelling of Jesus' name. And then the other iota word that I picked is this one, Judaios. And Judaios here, that's a delta, alpha, iota, omicron, sigma, Judaios. Judaios, let me clarify something about the pronunciation here. When iota is at the beginning of a word, it can have that Y sound, like I'm pronouncing it in these. When it's in the middle of the word, it's almost always just a straight vowel sound. But why I picked Judaios, it really should be translated Judean, but it often gets translated Jewish. And that becomes problematic. Because yes, we are using it to talk about Jewish people, but the ways in which this word is translated Jewish has added to the ways in which the New Testament has been used to harbor and create anti-Semitism. And so, for instance, in the Gospel of John, when this Greek word Judaios appears over and over, and it creates a negative, whereas what we're talking about is the people of Judea at the time. We're talking about Judeans as opposed to Jewish people. And we'll get into how language and how it's been used and translated gets into some of these things. But this is the letter iota, which is an I, little lower.
Sorry,
Sure.
It's kind of hard to see the Judaios. Can you call out those letters one more time?
Sure. Capital iota, omicron, upsilon, which is the U, delta, alpha, iota, Omicron, sigma. And these are all in alphabetical order in the session 1 folder of our Google Drive in a file that's called like alphabetical pronunciation something.
It's the alphabet word list.
There we go, alphabet word list. It's in there. And you can see there them typed out. So that is also helpful. Theta, iota, and then kappa. Also, I know this is thrilling alphabet work, but I hope it's interesting and we'll get through as much as we can of it tonight. Thanks for your attention. We are getting there. The next letter is kappa. The lowercase one only takes up half. So like as opposed to English where you make that tall part, in Greek, it is just a little k with the top and the bottom parts being equal that you make that takes up only half of the line. Kappa is a hard K sound, and so it makes the sound like kitchen or candy, which English is a confusing one here. And so it's a hard K sound always. I should have done this one first. This is like the most common word in the Greek Bible, and it is kappa, alpha, iota, chi. Chi. Also, I told a friend of mine from seminary I was teaching Greek tonight, and she's like, chi, because that's the only word she remembers. And this is the word for and. And this is a very important word also because as we looked at the manuscript, ancient manuscripts didn't really have punctuation, or it wasn't the same. Sentences aren't exactly the same. And so often chi is a placeholder like of a period. And so when you look at a Greek text, you're going to see like kai all over. And it's the word for and. We also have here kalos, the word for good or beautiful. And kurios, that's a upsilon, U. Kurios, which is the word for Lord. From kurios, that's Kyrie. We get Kyrie, which is the first word of that in Greek. Lord have mercy. Questions on kappa? Alphabet again, got that. Sorry. Lambda. All right, lambda. Lambda is like a delta, but you forgot the bottom in the capital. And then the lowercase, it starts up kind of high, so higher than half the line, and then goes down. If you want to make it as one stroke, it goes back up its leg, like that. Lambda. Depending on your handwriting, sometimes they can look kind of like that. Again, my math and science people probably have their own way of writing this, right? Lambda is just an L sound, like law, though I shouldn't have picked that word. It's an L sound because this word appears later. But this is an important word in the Greek is logos. Logos, which is the word for word. So, word, or kind of this word we'll get into more, but logos is more like a representation of an idea is the logos. So, questions about lambda? Okay. Who knows what comes next? It's like in English. Yes. I saw one of you make it. It's a moo. They pronounce this one a little bit differently in the video. I've always just said moo. The important part is the sound. So it's an M. And the lowercase moo, which again, math and science people might look funny until you realize it is an M. It just got like squashed below the line. So I'm gonna make my line up here now because I'm crowding that. And so you start on the left. There you go. Moo. My Greek example words are meta, which is with, and me, which is not. May. That's eta, which makes the A sound. Meta, may. There you see the difference between the two E sounds. How fun! What questions do you have about moo? It's an M. You got this. M. New. All right. It's an N. Sounds like an N. But it looks like in the capital it is an N, but in the lowercase it's a V. There's some nuance to writing this. So you'll see and notice in some fonts that in writing new, the left-hand part that you start with is straight and the second part is more curved, sometimes even having kind of a flourish there. So it can look like this, or it can just be a V. But this is new, the letter that makes the sound. And so the Greek example word that I picked is nomos, which means law. Nomos, which means law. Questions on new? All right, next, it's my favorite letter. It's my favorite. See, it's my favorite because it's so different, and we don't have this in English, and it's fun to write. It's different. Not a lot of words start with it, but this is an important word. See, in the capital is just 3 lines. The middle one is shorter, so kind of your top line taking up the whole room. And then your lowercase also takes up the whole line, and even will start like at the very top of the line, making a tail and a curlicue, and then Brett messed it up. So I had to start over. It's hard to like talk through making letters you know how to make. So the top part of the C is smaller than the bottom part. So the top portion is a little smaller than the bottom portion, which kind of looks like a zeta. I'm gonna make a zeta because I was talking about it. Xi, it's my favorite. Super fun to say. Xi makes a x sound like axiom. It's really like a KS sound. Axiom or tax. So it's your X basically. And if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, great movie, they talk about this word, or the modern Greek version of this word in that movie, xenos. Xenos is your stranger or your foreigner or your guest. It can also be translated friend. Xenos. Xenos. Questions on Xi? Omicron. It's an O. It's written like an O. It's written like a lowercase o. You can do it. It's an O. Xi. O. Omicron. It makes a short O sound basically. Off. Pot. Yeah, because omega makes a long O sound. So here we have, this word's a little harder though. There are not a lot of words that start with Omicron, although just Omicron is a word, and it is the word for thee, like this. Ho is the masculine thee. Again, you don't have to know this, and you don't have to memorize anything. We're just doing this for fun. Uranos is heaven, the word for heaven. I'm gonna keep going like this. So the next is pi. You know pi. You love pi. You took middle school math. And so the capital is more like straight up and takes up the whole line. You know what the lowercase looks like. It looks like this. It's a pi. Makes a puff sound. There are more P sounds in English than there are in Greek. This one kind of always makes a sound like, and I remember, maybe Samantha, we had some of the same Greek professors in college. I remember them like harping on us making the p sound, and like when it doesn't make air. But this is p like pillow or peach, and so they're both pretty like sharp p sounds. This is a really important Greek word, and I forgot to write it in English, so maybe somebody will have a guess. I bet you will. This is pistis, which is the noun form. But does anyone have a guess what pistis means? It's okay. Yes, that's someone wrote a derivative, epistemology, in the, it is a derivative, but it wouldn't
Is it an
necessarily help. No,
Like episode?
no. This is a very important word in Greek. It's the word for, in the Bible, not in all of Greek. Like in the Greek that I learned in ancient Greek, like words like kill are more important, and like Xenophon, and like you read the ancient Greek tragedies. But this is in the Bible, this is the word for faith. So this is the noun, pistis is the word for faith. It is the word for trust or faith. Interesting, right? Because trust and faith are a little different in English. Also, it has a verb form. The verb form gets translated believe. More on that later. Pistis, P.
I have a pie question or P question.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sorry. Now I'm flashing back to like freshman year of college, but
Dr. Oakley, yeah.
Yeah. But actually it has to do with his pronunciations of it. Is it pronounced P or pie? Because I know like fraternities pronounce it pie and mathematicians pronounce it pie, but I remember when you're alphabetic gamma delta epsilon zeta eta theta, when you were saying C,
right?
C, and then near the end of the alphabet, there's more words that end in I, but which way is it when you're pronouncing the letter going through the alphabet, which way is correct?
Really good point. Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for catching me, because I forgot to mention it on this one. I'll hit it on the others when we get to the other ones that end in I. Yeah, and you might have noticed in the video, they do say P. And if you want to be a good like ancient Greek person and not just a fraternity Greek, there's nothing wrong with learning Greek for a fraternity, but you would say P. And so,
I just want to know if Professor Oakley was correct or not when he said pie.
I think we all say pie when we're just not thinking about it, right? But like, yeah, I think the like most correct way to pronounce this as a Koine Greek letter is P. And so it kind of similar to like, okay, the next letter is rho. Well, hold that thought. We'll talk about it more when we get to ki or chi, right? So pi, P, and also the P helps us pronounce that and like aspirate it correctly. The R sound looks like a P. You'll be okay. If you pronounce this with a P, you'll live. It'll be all right, and we've all done it. This is an R though. Just imagine that it's an R that lost its like little tail on the capital. So have that remind you, this is a rho. And rho looks like a capital P or a P that is below the line. So like this, like a regular P. So it makes the sounds like rocky or rod. There are like hardly any Greek words that start with rho. And so I'm not putting one here. Pi, rho, P, rho, sigma. We've met the sigma. I'm trying to get through these also to respect our time. Sigma, big sigma. You may be familiar from Excel. And then we have our internal sigma, lowercase, and our final sigma, lowercase. Makes a soft S sound like signal or say, sound, sigma. This is the A Greek word for flesh. This one is like flesh, fleshy, and it's also the word used in like battle or talking about flesh of anything, not just people, is sarx. Yes, this is the only letter with 3 different options or any multiple options here. So sigma, sarx, forgot my accent. Sarx. Tau, it's a T. Looks like a T. Looks like a pi in the lowercase, but only with 1 leg. Tau, tau. T sound, talk. I gave you a letter. Trace, you know, trace. So there we see that row. It's an R. It'll be okay. Trace. 3. Tau. Oopsilon. Ooh. All right, this is a U sound, but it's a U sound that sounds like the French oo or the German U with an umlaut. And so it has that range of sound, everything but Canadian, for how you would pronounce boot or foot. And some other things. So just, it's a U, but it's more like a French U or a German U. Ooh, ooh, it's an ooh sound. It's an oopsilon. And this is oopsilon, pi, omicron. But look, that's a rough breathing. It stops you. So this is hupo, hupo, which is a preposition for by or from. Hupo. All right, we got 3 minutes. Go. Fee. Fee. That's not phi. Fee. I will be a stickler on this. Fee. It's your F sound. Phone. Phobia. Fee. Uppercase. Lowercase. Lowercase looks like this. Fee. Faux. Be, oh my, faux be, oh my, faux be, oh my, to be afraid. Phobia, right? Phobia, faux be, oh my, to be afraid. Fee, key, key, can kind of be a CH sound, but not really. Key, which is a capital X, or the lowercase goes a little below the line. So it's just a X, sometimes it has a swirly one, but makes a sound like loch. Well, you could put a little spice on that, a little like brogue on it, or not. Or it could be character. It's really kind of a K sound. Charis, charis. Remember that's an R. Charis. This is a word for grace. From this we get the word charity. C, keep, C. Runner up for my second favorite letter here, or it is my second favorite because C is fun to say. It makes PS sound like lips or tipsy. And to write it, this part's below the line here. So it's kind of like a U with tails and then a line through it. C, psuke, psuke, psuke. This is a word for soul. But interestingly, this is from where the derivative is psychology. Psuke. Phi, keep, C. Omega! We made it! You made it through the alphabet. And some of you are looking at me like, oh man. Omega is well, you've probably seen the capital Omega, right? And then the lowercase looks like a, fancy W that's only half the line. Omega is a long O sound, so remember, they sound like how you pronounce them. Omega makes an O sound, like ocean or tone. This is Omega Sigma. It's a whole word, but it has a rough breathing mark, so it's hos, hos. Hos is the simile word for like or as. Omega, we made it. Questions about the letters? I realize we've spent a whole hour and a half together and you are still with me, so thank you for that. I want to respect that. If you need to go, of course you can sign off, but I also want to make time for any questions that you don't want to forget about the alphabet or anything else that we've talked about so far. Anything? I realize we've run through a whole lot that you don't need to remember, but you've gotten some exposure to letters, to words, to sounds, and we're going to do this together. It's going to be fun. Questions? I'll keep talking. You can put questions in the chat to me or email me, of course, anytime. In the session 1 folder, you will find the reflection questions, everything we looked at for tonight, including the alphabet word list and the alphabet itself. Also, there's some practice if you'd like to do some homework, and what it is transliteration. And so transliteration is not translation, it's just taking English letters or English words and then writing them like you would write in Greek. So what sounds they make and practicing with those letters. You can do the homework or not. We're going to jump back in next time, kind of picking up where we left off here and starting to look at some letters and words in context. So I realize this was a lot with the alphabet, but I hope it was fun. Crystal, I don't understand your question.
The IPA version, the International Phonetic Alphabet.
Oh, that's a good question.
So I tried to look and find one because it really bothered me listening to the song where they say the V sound instead of the B sound. And so I tried to see if I could find somewhere where they were actually doing the IPA, and I couldn't. So the fact that you don't...
It's not settled. That's the thing. And like I looked at 4 different introductory Greek books for tonight, and they all had slightly different ways of talking about the pronunciation of the alphabet. So it's not a settled subject. So I'm not sure actually. I'll look, Crystal, and see, and I'll upload it if I find one. Any others? All right. Thanks for hanging in there. We did it! The alphabet. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, epsilon, phi, psi, omega. And so that's my version. But thanks for learning a little Greek with me tonight. And hope you'll come back next week, same time for the first 5 sessions. We'll record all these as well. So have a great night. And I'll see you next week or Sunday. I'll be there Sunday. I'm getting better. So good to see you all. Bye. I'm going to stop recording now.